Hey everybody, welcome back to Sweatpants BI. It's me, Sean here. Today is a very cold, rainy, dreary January day here in Kentucky. So I'm not going to be doing anything outside. Gave me some time to throw together another quick Power BI video on something that we all deal with day in, day out when we're building Power BI reports. And that is, how do we juggle the real estate on our report page, dealing with data visualizations, slicers, text boxes? How do we make room for it all? So I thought that it might be useful for you to walk you through an example of how you create an interactive menu that a user can expand and collapse when it's not being used. This menu can actually contain anything that you want it to. In the specific example that I'm going to be walking you through, we're basically going to be creating a menu that the user can activate that's going to contain a whole bunch of slicers, that the user can use to filter the data. It's going to contain some additional navigation options that the user can toggle through, if they're trying to find another page or something else within your report. But the beautiful thing about this is that we have all of these really cool controls and functionalities for the user, and we're going to allow them to just get rid of it when they're not using it. So it's going to save us additional space on our report page for data visualization. That's what we're here for with Power BI. That's what we want the user to be focused on. Insights, not figuring out where things are located because our page is drowning in slicers. So thought that I would just quickly take 25 minutes or so, walk you through an example on how you quickly build a interactive, collapsible menu, kind of like web-like menu for your Power BI reports to sort of help organize your space. So let's go ahead and look through how I created this example. So here I've got my football players summer transfer report. And there is a lot in this report. Basically, the premise for this specific Power BI report is we're analyzing a bunch of data about transfers of different, professional football players in a specific season here, the 2022 to 2023 window. So the sorts of information in this report is information about, like the players themselves, what position they play, which team or club they used to play for, which club they're moving to, transfers between the different leagues and different countries, and how much money was paid, for those different players. So there's a lot of information here. And as I scroll through the different navigation options, obviously there's like a landing screen here with some summary measures. The next screen has some of the demographic information, like how old are the players, where are the youngest players ending up, some information about like the oldest and youngest players by country. There's information about the players at various positions on the pitch. There's information about the different countries that players are either leaving or going to. Information about various clubs, and specific focus on the English Premier League, and also information about like which 11 players might make the most sense on the field, including a build that I was pretty proud of that allows somebody to actually build their own perfect starting 11 based on different criteria, like age, market value, and fees. So obviously there's a lot going on here, and let's imagine a scenario where we were trying to create an easy way for users to navigate between these different views or figure out a way to add a bunch of slicers to this. So, I mean, like, one option might be to use the filter pane that's built into Power BI right here. You can add some filters here, but we don't want to do that for this specific scenario. What we're trying to do is we're trying to build a menu with just a button, say up in this top right corner, that a user could select to expand a menu full of slicers and navigation options that they can then get rid of when it's not in use without disturbing anything else on the page. We're trying to keep things as simple as possible, all things considered. So we're just trying to build, like a web-like interface with a button that they can press that's going to give them additional features and controls that they can utilize to get more out of this report. So again, our button is going to go up here in the top right corner. We're going to use roughly this space here that I'm hovering on for our expanded menu. Our journey here is going to begin in a website that I love and use all the time called uxwing.com, that's full of just thousands of free icons that you can download. They don't sponsor me. I'm just a fan of the website, and everything on there is free, so I use it all the time. And we're going to just search for menu. There's all kinds of different options here for different menu options that we can use, but I was honestly just looking for a very basic hamburger menu icon. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. You can either download a PNG or a SVG. I usually use SVGs because they're pretty easy to work with in PowerPoint. I'm going to go ahead and open that the location of that file up in another window, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up PowerPoint, and I'm going to drag my hamburger menu icon into PowerPoint, and I'm going to create two versions of this. And the only reason I'm creating two versions of this is so that I can have special hover functionality in the button where I'm going to put this icon in Power BI. So I'm going to just want to borrow some of these like maroon colors from my report just to sort of tie the theme together. So one of these icons is going to be sort of my base maroon that I'm using across my color palette in that report. And I'm going to make the other one sort of a darker maroon. And I'm going to go ahead and save these. I'm going to save the first one as menu off, and I'm going to save the next one as menu on. And the off and on is just the language that I use to basically indicate the different states of this button when the user interacts with it. So on is what happens to the button when the user is interacting with it. Off is when the user is not doing anything with the button and it's just its default state. So I'm going to go ahead and head back over to my Power BI, and I'm going to grab a button here. It can be a blank button. I don't need anything in this button because I'm going to be adding everything myself. You can see it's got an outline on it. I don't need that, so I'm going to go into my style options and my formatting. I'm going to turn off border, and I'm also going to turn off icon. These options were on by default, but I'm not going to need them. I'm going to go to my fill settings next, and I'm going to go turn that on, set my transparency to 0. And currently I am interested in picking the default state of this button. So I'm going to go to my default settings. I'm going to grab my menu off button, set my transparency down to 0. And you can see it looks kind of weird here. That's because my image fit is set to normal. I'm going to want to change that to fit. And now I'm going to want to try to kind of shrink this so that it looks a little bit better. That's not looking too bad. I'm going to drag it into place. And you can see that there is white with a white space within the icon. In order to make this blend in with my background a little bit more, I'm going to go to my fill settings and I'm just going to pick the closest gray that I can get. Let's try this one. Just enough to where that sort of background is as invisible as possible. I could probably continue to massage this or even go into my PowerPoint deck where I built the background for this and get the exact hex code for demonstration purposes. Any variation here between these grays is really difficult to see, so I'm pretty happy with it for now. Next, we're going to go back to our style settings on that icon, and we're going to now change the hover state of our fill settings. So for the hover state, I don't want the fill to be this menu underscore off SVG. I want it to be the on version that we also saved. So I'm going to go ahead and browse for the on version and do the same thing where I adjust the image fit to fit. So now, when the user hovers over this, they're noticing that it's getting dark and returning back to its regular color. That is the effect that we want. We just want to, have enough of a color flourish here to get the user's attention that, hey, this does something. So once we've got that, now we're actually ready to start building our menu. And so I'm going to go ahead and first grab a rectangle just to serve as the, there we go, just to serve as the actual background of our expandable menu here. You can put this pretty much wherever you want to. I'm going to put it roughly there. And something that I like to do when I'm building these sorts of menus is I like to go, with just sort of a dark gray, something that is, not too obtrusive. I definitely don't like to add like additional color here. I want this menu to just be, as minimalist as possible so that users can make their selections and get out. But I do like to adjust the transparency so that there is just enough of the underlying background poking out for the user to sort of, realize, oh, okay, everything is interacting when I make selections here. I want them to be able to see as much of the report at all times as possible. Okay, so now that I've got my background here, I'm going to go ahead and start just adding some slicers to my menu here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab player name from my data set. I'm going to go ahead and format this so that I can copy and paste everything and just save myself time in the future. I'm going to go to my background. I'm going to give that a white background so that people can actually see the drop down. I'm going to make my font a little bit larger here. I'm going to go to my properties real quickly and make sure that responsive is turned off. It is. I'm going to go to my slicer header. I'm going to make that a little bit larger as well. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to go back to my values, and I'm also going to change this to the same font. So I'm just going to make it 16. This, if you want to, you can also add search capability to this slicer if you want to by just clicking on the ellipsis here, activating search. I'm going to go to my slicer settings. I'm going to turn off multi-select with control. I want people to be able to multi-select as much as they want to. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to add to this area up here a select all option so that if you want to exclude a player, it's really easy to do that. So once I'm pretty happy with how everything is set up, I'm just going to copy and paste this now that it's been formatted correctly. And I'm going to add, about 5 or 6 slicers for this demonstration. Here I'm going to add the league that they are transferring from and their club. So I'll call this current club. I'll open up my 2 options. Identify this as new league and new club. And I might even add, some of this information like player market value. So I'll go ahead and change this from a drop down to between. Now I need to go back to my general properties, advanced options, turn off responsive so that I get a more attractive slider. I'll go back to my values here. All I'm doing is I'm just formatting everything so that you can actually read and make out the values pretty easily. We keep playing with that a little bit more. My slider is still a little bit difficult to see with that kind of gray color, so I'm going to go ahead and make that white. You can test it out if you want to. I'm going to copy it and do the same thing with fees paid per player. I'm going to set that to between as well. I'll go ahead and drop these down a little bit to make way for a player age slicer. All that's looking pretty good to me. And so I'm going to go ahead and just quickly multi-select everything. I'm going to go to my format options. I'm going to align to center to make sure that everything is perfectly lined up. And then I'm going to distribute vertically to make sure that the spacing is as consistent as possible between all of my different slicers here. The next thing that I want to do is I want to add some just navigation buttons up here to the top in this empty space here. And so to do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and make sure that I drop all of these slicers down just a little bit more to make sure that I'm affording myself enough room. Let's go ahead and move all of this into position. Next, I'm going to go ahead and insert another, whoops, 1 second, didn't need a text box, I need a button. I'm going to go ahead and grab a button here. And since I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, views on this. I'm going to go ahead and try to set this up in such a way that I have got two columns, two columns with 3 buttons and then 1 additional button here at the bottom. So I'm just quickly kind of dragging all of these into place. Want everything to look as clean and crisp as possible. I'm going to go ahead and align these left. Do the same thing over here. And then I'm going to make sure that these are aligned to the center. Okay, all of that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and worry about my formatting settings. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my text options. I'm just going to enter TBD for now so that I can focus on my formatting. I'm going to go to my border settings and my icon settings and turn those off. And I'm going to start just, with my text here. I'm going to make this large enough to read pretty easily. I'm going to select my DIN font. If you want to add a little bit of a fill to this, no problem whatsoever. You can kind of do what you think is reasonable. Let's try 95% transparency. Or if you want to go dark, let's see how that looks. Not bad. So pretty happy with how that looks. Now we're going to adjust our hover settings, and I'm going to adjust our hover settings so that the text is still white, but our fill is going to become, sort of the same plum that we're using in other areas of the report. And I'm going to drop my transparency down to 0 for that. So now I've got all of my navigation buttons set up. This first view is going to be my landing. The next view is going to be my demographics. After that, positions and then countries. Followed by clubs, then the perfect starting 11, and finally build your own starting 11. So now I've got all of my navigation buttons set up. The thing that I need to set up now is a means for the user to just close out of this menu. So one more thing that we can do here, just super quickly, is add yet another button. We're going to add this to the top right corner. As always, we're going to turn off our icon and border settings. We're going to turn on text. And I am just going to type X in this, set it to the right font. I want it to be fairly large. I'm going to go ahead and set my text to white. And when the user hovers over it, I really don't want anything to happen. I just want it to maybe get a little bit larger. Again, just kind of indicating to the user, hey, I can press this and get rid of the menu. Okay, so now I'm going to just very quickly enable my navigation options for my different buttons here. All of my navigation buttons are configured via bookmarks. So I'm just going to go to my actions, turn on bookmarks. I'm going to set this to welcome. I'm going to set this to demographics. I'm going to set this bookmark to positions, this bookmark to countries, this bookmark to clubs, And I know this is getting pretty repetitive, but it's worth kind of driving home. I'm going to set this to starting 11, and then finally, last but not least, build the perfect 11. Okay, so now that I've got my menu set up, all I need to do is set up some new bookmarks to where the user, regardless of where they are in the report, will always be able to access this. And since I've already got some other bookmarks, this is a little bit more complicated than it would normally be. So I'm going to set up 2 bookmarks, and I'm going to make sure that my settings are with data turned off and with selected visuals turned on for both of these. So I'm going to turn off my data, and I'm going to turn on my selected visuals. And the first one is going to be called menu invisible. And the next one is going to be called menu visible. Pretty simple, right? And the X is going to now point at this menu invisible bookmark, because when the user presses this X, we want the menu to go away. And our original button in the background here, the hamburger, we want that to point at the bookmark that makes the menu visible. So let's go ahead first and grab everything that we've got on the page here, and let's just go ahead and group it into menu. So all I did was I just multi-selected everything in the selection pane, right-clicked, and grouped it. If I went a little bit too fast for you on that, as I'm prone to doing, I'll go ahead and ungroup everything and show you again how I did it. If you have your selection pane open, just grab the first item, hold Shift, grab everything that makes up your menu, right-click, hit Group, and now we've got a group that contains all of our menu items. And so I'm going to first make sure that I am hovering on the hamburger icon that is in the background, and I'm going to hide that because I don't want the hamburger visible when the menu is open. So now I'm going to reselect everything that makes up my menu, and that is why we have selected visuals enabled. We want these bookmarks to only ever affect the specific objects within the report that make up our menu. We don't want anything else on this very complex report influenced at all. So we're going to want to make sure that we're using selected visuals as our option. And since the menu is visible now, I'm going to go ahead and update my menu visible bookmark. And next is super easy. I'm just going to basically go through everything and just flip what is hidden and what is revealed. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly and hide everything and reveal my hamburger button for my menu. And then I'm going to reselect everything, and I'm going to make sure selected visuals is selected, and I'm going to update menu invisible. And that should literally be all that we need to do. Now when I click on my hamburger button, which I'm wondering if I did not point at the correct bookmark, which I didn't. I'm going to point this at menu visible. Now when I click on my hamburger, notice my menu comes up. When I click on my X, it goes away. If I go here and select, one of my other navigation views, you can see that the navigation is working in the background. There we go. And notice that if I select, that I only want players who are under 30, everything is now working here. I can close this. All of my filters are still preserved. I can open this menu back up at any time and reset my filters again, and I can get rid of this at any time, and everything is totally fine. So you saw that setting up that menu just was not terribly difficult. And now, it gives my users a range of additional options. I know that having sort of 2 navigation options is maybe a little bit redundant, but this is a super bare bones navigation menu up here that really doesn't tell you what views are available. So I'm giving the user, a couple of different scenarios that they can use to navigate this report. Either they can just click the soccer balls up here and sort of go through it piecemeal, or if they know that they're looking for one specific view, they can open up the menus, filter to what they're trying to get, and if they know they're interested in exploring clubs, they've got a shortcut to get to the clubs page so that they can start consuming that information. So there you go. You can see it really only takes about 15 or 20 minutes to build a web-like menu that is going to drastically improve the user experience of your report by moving a bunch of the items that tend to become clutter in our Power BI reports, things like navigation buttons, things like slicers, puts them all in one place where the user can find them when they need them and then just get rid of them when they're not being used. So that the things that are on your report all the time are primarily data visuals and insights, the things that they really came there for. So I hope you found that useful. I'll probably revisit this topic in the future because there are a million different ways that you can set up a perfectly effective menu like what I just showed you in Power BI. I've deployed things like this 100 different ways. I'll probably, I may even revisit this year with a completely different way to approach this topic. But takeaway is it's going to really benefit your users as much as anyone. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for supporting Sweatpants BI. If you feel like supporting Sweatpants BI even a little bit more, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for checking us out. Can't wait to check back with you next week for whatever I end up presenting on Sweatpants BI. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.